Welcome to Lead and Lace.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I feel like I haven't seen you all day. You got home late. You've been working late.
Yeah.
Grinding.
Just getting after it.
Hard. I've been working late too. I had like 3 late nights last week. And then it's Tuesday and I feel like I've worked all 5 days.
You know, it was funny. I was in the office today and one of my good friends and I were talking about our notebooks, and we were kind of sizing up each other's notebooks. And
because you got a new one?
Yeah, because I got a new one. It's really nice, and and it was kind of like, oh man, you got a nice notebook, and he's got the same one. It was like, yeah, don't you like this part and this part? And it just kind of like brings me back to another conversation where
the breast milk conversation. Yeah, I knew you were going there.
Yeah, where a bunch of the guys in the shop who just recently had babies, we're all sitting around talking about how our wives are breastfeeding and like how you gotta make sure that they do this and do that, and we all just kind of stopped after about 15 minutes of breastfeeding conversation in a shop full of dudes, not a woman in sight. Yeah. And we're like, dude, do you remember like 5 years ago when we used to talk about boobs in a completely different manner? Yeah. And it just kind of goes back to like
titties.
Oh man, look at how we're growing up.
Growing old, not up, old.
We're sizing up each other's business cards and notebooks.
Yeah. My notebook's cooler than yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but actually it is pretty profound when you get a new notebook, how it makes you be like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going to pay attention in this meeting and maybe even jot a couple things down in this handy little notebook of mine that I carry around. I often, like something about myself that I didn't even realize until I turned 35. Like I literally did just realize this in the last year. I carry a notebook everywhere I go at work. I've never opened it to reference it. Not once.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that.
Never, not once. But what I've learned about myself, and I learned this in college, is that by taking notes, it helps me remember things. But the notes, it's not a tool.
I will never go back and read
it's not a tool, right?
Yeah, like I will write down in my calendar, I'll write on the side, everything. Mm-hmm. And I carry it around everywhere. It's kind of like in the culture, like if you don't have a notebook, you're not prepared.
Who are you? Yeah.
And so, but yeah, no, on my off time or in between things, I very rarely open it up.
Oh, I've literally never gone, let me check my note from December 12th. Because half the fucking time, you should see my scribble. I look right like Merrick.
I have seen your scribble.
I write like Merrick. I mean, but here's
these little hands.
Yeah. Here's the funny thing is when you got me the iPad, it actually profoundly changed my note game, because I definitely reference my notes because they're hand typed, and I literally am like typing and looking around the room and like being able to pay attention to the meeting as I'm note taking, versus like sometimes when your head's down, you can't really see. And like a lot of the stuff that I'm taking notes on are visual presentations. Like for example, I just went to Texas for that JCPenney's meeting, and they were showing us that proprietary information so that it wasn't a takeaway, but it was a do out that we had to visually remember and take notes on and then go home and tell our team about. And so I was like, and I was literally the only person in that meeting with an iPad or any sort of electronic device. So everyone was like scribbling notes, and yeah, you can't take photos. So it was kind of like interesting. And we left, and my boss was like, you're the only person in that room with some sort of technology. I was like, yeah. That's pretty strange. They're like, I wasn't the youngest person in the room, but I was the smartest. Like
for that moment.
Yeah, in that moment, I was the smartest for having that tool. But it's just funny, the tools that you use in workplace and how useless they actually are as far as like a notebook goes. Like it's actually quite useless for me.
Well, I mean, there are some people that live and die by their notebook.
Yeah, some people do go back.
One of my peers and then one of my leaders, they have a notebook and they write in it, and they'll reference notes from like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I had a friend that would do that too. She had it color coordinated and highlighted, and she had it all sorts of organized.
Yeah, they're not quite that gnarly, but But they're on point.
Their crayons are the same.
They're not the same crayons.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, like, no, just note taking is just more of like a brain activity versus actually like a tool that I go back and reference. But
do you have a routine that you kind of try to stick to throughout your day?
No. My day is like as chaotic as you would assume. Just every day you just kind of wing it? Yeah, pretty much, dude. Like, I fly by the fucking seat of my panties. So, no, I'm being sarcastic. Like, for the most part, every day I try to check emails at home before I leave to go to the office, because if I don't do that, then I end up spending like the first 45 minutes checking emails. And because I manage a team, I am interrupted like 45 million times a day. So if I don't check emails in downtimes, like in between meetings, in the bathroom, in like, downtimes, literally, then I fall behind, and I hate falling behind on email. So I usually check email as soon as I wake up. And then when I get to work, I try to handle anything that came through that morning in email, because I have a lot of people I work with on the East Coast. So a lot of stuff comes through at like 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. That's like, Mayday, Holly, where's this sample? We're going to lose the entire account because you didn't send the sample. And so I have to go track and figure out what the sample is. So the first like 40 minutes of my day are dealing with problems from the day before. And then I could settle in usually around like, I have fittings at 9:30 in the morning. Those are a half an hour to an hour. And then I usually settle in and get a couple creative things done. And then juggle people coming to me and saying like, Holly, this person wants this. What do I do? Or, hey, this art's turning out terrible. Can you go manage how to fix it? And just like a lot of management type of things throughout the day. And then I'm in meetings a lot. So
do you feel like you could benefit from trying to dial in a more regimented routine? So
I've tried. I think in my past, when I was a designer, I had a pretty regular routine. I think managing a design team, there's just so much chaos in the form of you just don't know what your day is going to come. Or you don't know what problems are going to come that day. Like your day could be totally smooth, no meetings, and then all of a sudden you do a fitting and literally nothing is fitting, and it's supposed to be in the store in 20 days. So you have to call like a Mayday meeting, get everybody together, figure out what's going on, test the fabric, test the fit, remeasure everything. I had that happen today. So, and then there's just so much chaos in China right now. I don't think anyone really realizes how dangerous and how detrimental this virus is going to be to the United States. So like basically all of China is quarantined. Freight forwarders are quarantined. The people who go home for Chinese New Year is a really interesting thing. So like people they're not from where they work. So for example, the factory puts you up in a dormitory, and then during Chinese New Year, you go home to your family. So a lot of times it takes 2 to 3 days, sometimes 5 days for these people to travel back to wherever they came from. So they're being told that they can't go back to work until the 10th is officially when the government's going to announce if they can come back or not. They were all supposed to be back this week. So we just lost another week out of Chinese New Year. So all of my goods that are supposed to deliver by 2/28 and 3/30 they're going to get delayed. And in my business, if you have a day delay, you get 10% chargebacks from the buyer. So every day you're late, you get 10% less, 10% less, 10% less. So
okay, to kind of bring it back to the original routine question is, so I totally understand what you're saying as far as, kind of once you show up to work, you have to adapt to the situation at hand and move forward. But as far as like what you could do prepping for the day, or how you wake up, how you enter the day, those are all kind of like things you can control.
Mm-hmm. It bores me. I don't have any interest in having a routine in my life.
It's so funny. It's so funny for how successful you are at your job and how good you are at the details in doing your job. how little you care about structure or organization or anything like that.
So I found I work really well in chaos. Like if I'm not super slammed, I don't get shit done. If I'm super slammed, I'll get literally everything on my list done. So I just thrive in chaos.
So I've been on deployment, 6 times. I've dealt with a whole bunch of like just shit shows that the military throws at me. When I look at your desktop, I get anxiety.
Yeah. You should see my desk.
You send me to war? No problem.
You should see my office. You should see the whole fucking
you have
building.
Files saved over file. Like your entire desktop is completely full.
Yeah.
Files over
I know where
files.
everything is.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It is absolutely crazy.
I have like a weird photographic memory when it comes time to work. And so I know exactly where I put that print. I know exactly where I put that silhouette.
God forbid anybody comes behind you.
Yeah, no shit.
No, but
I don't want to leave a nice little trail behind me. I leave a fucking storm.
Really incredible how
I just think everybody works differently.
Yeah, no, that's kind of what I'm getting at is I think it's so incredible how you can be so successful in your job doing things the way you do, whereas I'm complete opposite.
Yeah, you're complete opposite of me.
I like control. I like having organization, and I like
routine.
Having a routine.
But you have routines, but you don't always stick with them. Like you go in like phases. Like, well, I'm going to play the guitar every night, or I'm going to go to jiu-jitsu every night, or I'm going to ride my bike every morning, and then that phases out. Or I'm going to make meals every day. Like that. You go through phases of routine.
Yeah, I haven't quite found something that works for me, and so one of the questions that I have for myself is whether or not I'm wasting potential by not having a good set routine.
I literally never question my potential. I never do.
Is that a good thing?
No. But it just was an epiphany I had. Like, I just know, I've never been like, am I wasting my potential by not listening to Limp Bizkit? It's a joke. Don, before we got on the podcast, Don admitted that he was a huge Limp Bizkit fan, so I had to throw a Limp Bizkit joke in there somewhere.
Man, when I was a kid, I remember...
Is that like the Don with the diddy? How does Limp Bizkit even... I don't even know what they sound like. Do a little...
all about the nookie.
Oh, all about the nookie. Okay.
Yeah. I remember, I think I was 12 at the time. And I know we're way off on a tangent now, but I was 12 at the time, and... No
one cares about rabbit holes. This is what podcasts are for.
Some people care.
Okay, routine.
Anyways.
I'm going to call you Raoul the routine man.
Jesus Christ. Anyways, so my brother and I were listening to Limp Bizkit. I was 12. He was, I think, maybe 5 at the time. And I was watching him before my mom got home from work. And Limp Bizkit was on MTV, and we were just getting after it, headbanging.
That's
dancing.
Cute.
And he accidentally headbutted me in the nose so bad. I was bleeding all over the place. I was messed
God.
up. And my mom came home. And
What'd you do?
What'd you do?
Your stories of your brother is so fucking funny, dude.
Yeah.
Like the hamster story where you gave him a bath and he almost drowned. I know.
No, he did drown.
He did drown him.
Yeah, he
just
was
kidding.
Dead. He was absolutely dead.
Yeah. Anyways, the potential thing, like I don't ever go, wow, I'm like really selling myself short by. I don't know. I don't know if I'm not removing myself enough and self-reflecting. I self-reflect quite often, but I don't think I've had that realization of lack of potential in a broad strokes way. Like I think about things like, oh, I wish I could speak Spanish, or I wish I would get back into dance, or, oh, I miss playing soccer. I think about things like that, but I don't ever go like, wow, am I not meeting my full potential?
Well, yeah, I think for me, the way I look at it is there's only so much time in the day.
Yeah.
And if I don't try to make the time as efficient as possible, then there's just so much wasted time when I could be applying it towards something that I want to achieve a goal.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I think that's an idealistic thought. I just think realistically, like it's kind of nice to not feel the need to fill every minute of every day with something, you know?
Sure.
Like you just let it go.
Yeah.
And just live.
Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not the type of person that wants to be on scheduled breaks in my own personal life, but you know, it's a commonality amongst very successful people that they have a routine.
There's a lot of chaotic people too that are successful.
Sure. And their success is often more creative. Mm-hmm. I'm totally making this up as far as what I would see like an actor's success or a musician's success or, you know, something along those lines is very like, let's ride the wave.
Yeah.
You know, but if you look at your brother's success,
he's pretty mechanical. Yeah.
Very mechanical, very calculated, very cautious about how he spends his time and kind of how he goes.
He's cautiously advantageous. Like he thinks about things carefully. Does this bring value to my life? Yes or no? And his evaluation of what's worth spending time on is pretty healthy. I also think that in my family, there's this innate drive to just work as fucking hard as you can possibly work. If there's someone working hard, I want to be working 400 times harder than that other person. And lately that's been really pulling me down, like as a human, because I get to a point where I look around and I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like that girl just went to Zumba and instead of going to this mandatory meeting, or I'm the only one in the office and everyone went home, or, you know, I'm, you know, every time Dick and Harry is working from home and I live an hour and a half away and I'm there every damn day, you know? So sometimes that really is a disadvantage for me. Obviously I've leveraged it over the years and made it my success story. I don't think I think I have talents, but I don't think that raw talent got me to where I am. I think work ethic and seizing moments and seeing the fastest way up to the top versus like, you know, I don't necessarily think it's all raw talent. I think there's a lot of like I totally really hard work.
But one of the things I think about is when I hear a lot of successful people talk about their time and what's worth their time, what's not worth their time. Mm-hmm. They almost monetize their hours.
Yeah, I have heard that.
And then obviously when you get more successful, then you're kind of you're seeking the free hours or setting aside hours for you to have a life with your family. Or enjoying yourself, enjoying your success.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I did hear that one time as well.
But I don't think that you need to be, I don't think you need to have made it or to be rich to start evaluating your hours and what your hours were.
Yeah, no, I heard that somewhere. They said, take what your hourly wage is, and then when someone asks you to do something or when an opportunity presents itself in front of you, you say, okay, that's probably going to take me about 3 hours. That's, let's say the number is $65 an hour. Is it worth it? And then that's how you equate it, making a decision that's evaluated for what your time is best spent doing.
So I agree with that to a point, because you as a very successful designer, you know, will just for the sake of the conversation say that your time's worth $100 an hour. Mm-hmm. Well, you taking on a new hobby in life or a new business or something, well, you are not a very successful business person. Therefore, your hour is not worth $100. Does that make sense? In that specific realm that you're trying to move into. So you have to be acceptable of building blocks and accepting a lower per hour wage. Yeah.
We've talked about this
so that
before.
you can build. You know,
we had a situation with a friend who was like, "Oh, I'm worth $400 an hour," and we're like, "But you were on some B sitcom. Like, you're not really a celebrity." Like,
in that one space that you were in, okay, you're worth $400 an hour, but you want to move into something completely unrelated, and here you're worth $10 an hour.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And sometimes when you're, one of the things like when we're talking about our promotional product business, when you're looking at the more successful people in that space, they're like, yeah, I'm not going to touch an account for under $10,000.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'll take that.
Yeah,
I'll take your peanuts.
One of my good friends, I had dinner with him when I was in New York last time, and he's one of my college friends. And I was like, so how, like, he's killing it in real estate. I'm like, how the fuck did you get into real estate? Because he was in fashion school with me. And he was like, yeah, he worked at Ralph Lauren for years and just got really sick of it. He's like, there's a glass ceiling. And eventually, and I feel that way as well. Like eventually you get to a point where you're like, not making more than this, time to pull the parachute. And he ripcorded into this opportunity with this guy who was like, yeah, I don't take homes for less than 10 mil. And so all his 10 mil and lower homes went to my buddy. And he was like, sweet. I'm making commission on a $5 million home, and I've literally just been in real estate for less than a year. So he's killing it. I don't think he's still with that same group. He's now branched off and done his own thing. But like some of the shit he posts on Instagram, I'm like, holy smokes.
Sure. And eventually he may have that same standard too, of where his hour's not worth
less than that. Yeah.
But you can't say that at the beginning, right? You have to.
He did though. That's the thing that was so profound about where he started in real estate. But he worked he's got an amazing work ethic. He's a hard ass worker. So he worked his way up in the fashion industry, and then obviously had selling as his back pocket tool. And I think you can translate being a salesperson in fashion versus a salesperson of a home. It's an aesthetic. It's a thing. Still, it's still a consumer purchase.
Sure.
So I think it was an easy transition for him. Yeah. But for me to go and make probably. Yeah. Not.
Well, I think one of the ways this translates most to, people in the military is and this is advice that I've gotten from several people who've gotten out, as we grow our career in the military and you're reaching that 20-year mark, you're basically doing just a bunch of administrative duties and staffing paperwork, and you're not really out there grinding like you used to when you were coming up. Mm-hmm. And so when you transition out of the military and you kind of go into a job, it's very hard to find that level of essentially to walk into that same level that you were in the military. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then having guys
have the same
get out
level
and
of respect and
I'm going to show up from this time to this time. I'm just going to staff work. I don't really want to do that, hard work thing. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, so you're not a master chief anymore.
So there's McDonald's. Yeah.
You're not a master chief anymore.
Yeah. Transitioning, I think, is going to be really tough for a lot of people, or has been tough for a lot of people we know as well. And I think anytime you can have some foresight before you get out about what it is you want to carve your path in, and make sure that you're building yourself up for the most successful launch into civilian sector, it's priceless. Because if you wait until you're like a couple months out to start thinking about what you want to do and what it looks like and what you would look like as a civilian employee, I think that could be pretty damaging to your ego when you get out, because there is definitely like a major lift of that pride and that, respect that you have and that you've carried with you. You're just another suit. Yeah. And another number.
Yeah. And I think successful people are going to be successful no matter what.
For sure. And I'm trying to be like Debbie Downer or anything, but I totally agree with what you're saying. It can be a culture shock.
If you, and I don't think it's really a big problem with a lot of people that I work with.
No, I agree.
Because you're kind of like we were talking about a while ago, you're kind of humbled your entire time through the program. And so if you're walking around with a huge, I'm perfect, I don't know how to fix anything, then you probably don't work with us. But at the same time, there's a lot of people in the regular Navy or the regular military that they're about to walk into a world that is going to be very hard for them to adjust.
That sounds like an awesome business opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
transitioning.
There's quite a few foundations that I've set up. That the Honor Foundation is one that was set up, and it's specific to SOF, but they walk you through 6 months, I believe, of
that's good.
resume building and interviews and how to speak, how to interview, how to meet with people and identify
How not to kill
jobs
someone if they piss you off.
Well, essentially, it's really
that was a bad joke.
It's hard to find a program like that for anybody, and no matter what college you went to or whatever.
Yeah,
and guys are landing killer jobs out of there.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, I mean, outside of a foundation that actually like walks you through it, I think it would be really helpful to have a follow-up, visit in a year or 6 months, because it's like great to launch you into the world. But like once you're actually in it, to check in on you and be like, yo, you still good?
Yeah,
you got this? Because I think it's one thing to get like all amped up and be like, yeah, I got this. And then you get in there, it's like a completely different world and not what you expected, or your expectations have to be kind of level set a little bit.
Yeah, I think at that point, it's just kind of dealing with culture issues, with having going from one company that is the Navy, very prideful, very, hoo-yah, blah, 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 to people who are like, no, you're my work friend. And then I have my real friends.
Yeah.
And I don't hang out with work friends.
Yeah. Yeah. We've had this conversation before too, like about, I go in, I do my job and I leave, and I'm not there to make friends. I don't go to lunch with anyone. I just get my shit done and get the fuck out. And it's a completely different experience than what I used to have in my, in my workplace. I lived close to work, so it was easy to have friends that lived by me or, around me, and we'd go have cocktails after work. And, it's kind of pre-children. I was actually just having this conversation with my sister on the way home. My twin, I was driving home and she gave me a ring, and she was kind of going through some stuff like relationship wise with her friends and just like transitioning, into different friendships, or out of friendships rather. And I was telling her like, yeah, I've had that same experience, especially because I moved to San Diego, and the people I work with, it's really hard like to meet people. So the people I work with were always my friends, but it's really hard to maintain friendships when you live in San Diego and they live in Long Beach or Cypress. So,
and I think, that's one of the most awesome things about our relationship.
Yeah,
is that
we're best friends.
You're still my best damn friend.
Yeah,
not
for
trying
sure.
To be all mushy about that.
No, that's exactly what I said to her. I said, all the more reason, because people constantly disappoint you, like constantly. Like I feel disappointed by people 95% of my day. And
that sucks.
It sucks at work. And then, or, I've had some pretty disappointing experiences with friends over the years. And I think for me, I always just kind of like, I'm always like, you should be a certain way in my brain, but when you're not, it really disappoints me. And so level setting like expectations for people has been a challenge and an exercise I've worked on for a long time. And but what I was sharing with my sister was that sometimes like major life pivotal moments really awaken you to who's good, who's bad, who's here for the long run, who's not. And what I've realized is in those moments, all the more reason to lean in on your spouse and make sure that your spouse is that person always. The first person you come to, the first person you cry to, the first person you hold, and making sure that intimacy with your spouse is, strong and always your best friend first, because those friends that, especially with females, I think it's not so prevalent with males. I think you guys have like stronger bonds. And, but yeah, with females,
with some, I mean, there's obviously a lot of guys out there that I'm indifferent on whether or not I ever see that person again.
Yeah.
But
I'd say the majority of it.
But my homies, I mean, those are my brothers.
Yeah.
Those are.
I even feel like that about them. Like I even feel like a close connection vicariously, whether they feel it or not. I'm like, yeah, those are my people too, just because they're your people, So, and I very much care about them, and I very much get emotionally sad or happy when they're going through something. And I'm tied emotionally to your friendships through you. But that's why it is so important to have your partner be your best friend first. We've talked about this before, where it was like, not on podcast, but offline. It's been a topic in our marriage for quite some time. And it's also kind of a topic we share with friends whenever we're having a conversation about marriage, but making sure, you know, in the rule of schemes, a schematic, if you will, of things, it's always God, husband, then children, and then friends, right? So it's kind of like level set your priorities and make sure, to your point, if you want to have like a regime and a strict place of being, mine is not necessarily in my routine, but it's definitely in the way that I like mentally capacitate priorities.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. One of the, I think, most interesting or kind of epiphany moments that you and I had before we even started talking about kids or decided to have kids was that you and I would always be number one.
Yeah.
And I kind of that, like, okay, sure, right? But if you look around, everybody puts their kids first. Everybody, you know.
Well, it's easy to do.
Yeah, well, you don't know. You know? So
you don't know what you don't know.
I'm going to be a parent. You're like, yeah, sure.
I know you know.
First,
yeah.
You know? And kind of the way, and I don't remember where we got that piece of advice. Maybe it was from your parents.
My mom and dad always kind of said that to me, and it's also kind of biblical. It's like, but God, spouse, children.
So at the same time, it was, I mean, it just completely makes sense because you're not saying that you love your kids any less. I mean, it's not a
less than.
They can exist at the same time. Like you can love your kids, you know, to the end of the world, but if you always place your spouse first, then essentially, if you're good, they'll be good.
100%. That's the biggest thing.
You can't be an asshole about it, right? You can't be like,
get out of here. Mom and dad are having sex tonight, kids.
Like, hey, kids, kind of fuck off.
Yeah, kick rocks.
On a date, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, when I say that, or when I think about that, it's not always easy. And definitely we had some tough times in the beginning when we first had Merrick, because when you have your first child, something happens to you where you're just like, I hate everybody, but I only love you. And like the way I describe it is like my heart could only love one thing, one being in that point in my life. I didn't even love myself. I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't really like, I didn't give a fuck what I looked like. I just wanted to make sure that little human was being cared for, fed, loved. And it was like sucking all the love from me, all the energy, everything I had was going into this like little human or, you know, parasite. They're very parasitic, babies are, you know? So, but in the most loving way, I'm not trying to say that I didn't have any sort of complete adoration for him, but
no, you know what? And I think one of the craziest things is, that I was like prepared for that. Because when my stepdad sat me down and was like, hey, look, this next year, you know, I'm holding Merrick for the first time ever. Got like so stoked to be a dad. Just put on Chief that day. Like literally
it was a big day for you.
The best day of my life.
Yeah.
Up until that point. And not because, you know, making Chief was a big deal, but I'm holding my son.
No, there's a lot of big deals.
You know,
yeah.
And so, and he's like, look, this next year is going to be tough. Mm-hmm. Just don't get divorced and shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And
that's good advice.
And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Get out of here. Don't steal my joy. Yeah.
Well, I'm like, I don't even understand how you could say that. He's like, trust me, this next year, it's going to be a rough one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, man, like, check, got it. And it was true. Like, it was just, I mean, the hormones and, adapting to life as being new parents and all this stuff.
But I think postpartum comes in so many different colors, and I didn't know the color mine came in until maybe like 2 years after I had it. And I was like, the way I describe it is like literally I had a veil of darkness around me that I only liked that baby. I didn't like you. I didn't like anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't like my coworkers.
A little monster.
Yeah. I just really didn't like anybody. I was kind of like in this, like a veil of darkness. And literally a year postpartum, it was like this veil lifted off my head. And I was like, I love my husband. I'm obsessed with my husband again. Like, yeah. I mean, I I spend most of my days just like absolutely obsessed with you. Love you. Can't
Me
get
too,
enough of
baby.
you, kissing you, loving on you. I said that to you the other day. I was like, do you find that like in public, we're the only couple that shows a lot of PDA and maybe we're like a little too much? I don't know. I'm totally fine with it if you're fine with it, but it's something that I've noticed just like in our friend circles, even like, I'm like, we just definitely kiss a lot in comparison. But anyways, my point in that is that when I wasn't feeling like that jive with you, it was scary for me because I'm like, what is this feeling that I have? So yeah, it's scary. And my point is, it's not always easy to prioritize your husband because you definitely get that veil of darkness sometimes about you with things that you can't control.
Well, I think it's the same, not the same situation, but you know, doing this job and how much you commit to being in this job and what you give up and how often you're gone. And then when you finally get to do the job, you're like, yes, I'm achieving my goals. It's something that I've worked so hard for.
Yeah.
And you have this bond with your brothers where they're like, hey, we're gonna, short pump you. You're gonna get less time home and you got to go out again.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, of course.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I don't need to check with you. Like, I'm going.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to call home. Like, I know I got it, and then we'll figure that out later.
In contrast, like, I think as wives, we kind of just go numb. We're just like, that's literally how I always felt when you were deployed, is I like just got numb, where I was like, okay, I'm not going to be touched for 9 months. Yeah. I'm not going to be, there's no intimacy. There's no physical touch for a lot of people is really like important.
Touch on the shoulder, scratching your back or whatever.
Like, I went to yoga one time when you were deployed for 9 months, and I think it was like the 8th month. So I'd spent 8 months of literally like no human interaction, maybe like a brush of a shoulder at work or something. Right? Like, that is as much human interaction as I had at the time. Didn't have children loving on me and kissing on me. None of my family lived here. So anyways, I went to yoga, and it was still back in the day when yoga was bitching, and they would like come around and give you like a little massage after the class. They don't do that anymore. I don't know why. But anyways, I was
probably sexual harassment.
Yeah, maybe. But I was like laying there, and this girl, or I don't even know if it's a girl or guy, but someone came by and they had like an aromatic oil. They wafted in my nose, and then they grabbed onto my shoulders, and I was like, oh. That's so weird. Yeah. Oh my God. It was like a weird feeling. I was like, touch. And I remember thinking, like, I was laying on my back having a, shavasana. And I was like, holy shit. I didn't realize how much my body needed to be touched by a human, even if asexual, right? It was just like a human touch.
Right. Yeah. And I think, going back to what I was saying is, when you were dealing with postpartum with Merrick, and kind of just, you're in this cloud and you're just running through this cloud. And then one day it just kind of lifted. And that's kind of the way, after like 6 deployments, you're like, okay, we're on the next one, reload, ready to go. And it's like,
keep going and going and going. Yeah.
Okay. Time out. Like if I just keep doing this, I'm gonna, like, I can only ask so much. And eventually you're just going to be like, nah, not this time.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I think for
I'm sorry, I'm not saying you specifically, but anybody.
Yeah.
And it happens to so many couples because you're gone for 3 years, and you're gone. You're missing that touch, and you're missing that affirmation. You're missing the, like, honey, I'm home.
Sure. I mean, when Trump brought that guy home and surprised his wife tonight in his State of the Union address, she looked numb. Like, her look to me was a very familiar look. It was like, yes, I'm getting by. I want to commit. I want to kill myself every day, but I get by.
I was wondering if those kids were like being hellions, and she was just like,
because she had the look, right? Like, she had a look. Like,
do you know
get
what
me through this? She wasn't smiling. She wasn't happy. She was just like numb, like completely numb, and probably pretty emotional inside. And When they showed that on national TV, I was like, oh my God, I remember that feeling. I remember that look. I remember that feeling. It's a shitty.
Kids are all confused.
Yeah, it's a shitty feeling because you're like, I want to jump into his arms because you have this like image of what it's going to be like after you haven't seen your spouse in 9 months.
It's like a movie.
You're like,
shit.
I'm going to jump in his arms. We're going to have like amazing sex, and it's going to be all the things. And then you like bump heads in bed, and you're like, oh fuck, I don't even know how to do this. My underwear won't come off. Like it's just like all sorts of fucked up, right? It's just not what you pictured, and I kind of thought.
I think our parents listen to this.
It's all good. We have 2 children. It's pretty obvious that we have a good sex life. But I think what I saw when I watched her with him, like I even kind of was like, come on, run and jump into his arms. And she was like, oh, hey, dude, welcome home. And the kids are like, who's that, mommy? Yeah. I was like, oh my God, and that was real, right? Like that was real. It wasn't like put on. It wasn't a show. It wasn't unauthentic. It was completely genuine what all us wives go through and what all of you guys probably feel. Like you probably felt sort of awkward too. Like you haven't really been in, an intimate situation.
No, it's definitely one of those where you're like, but you're the one coming home. So you like, it's like, I'm going to be received like this or whatever. You know? And so it's almost like high five.
Yeah.
Like a 15-year-old, trying to get a first kiss at this first dance type of thing.
I always kind of felt like a little disconnected from you for a couple of weeks and sometimes months. So depending on how long you were gone, I always kind of was like, okay, let's start by holding hands. Let's start from square one because this is a little awkward. Like kissing with braces is how I would equate it. Yeah. But you get there and you find your groove and you're like, oh yeah, we found our sync again. Well, the worst is when you're grooving really hard and you're like really jiving, having a great intimate life and very much into each other. And then you have to deploy. That is literally like the worst feeling. Because you're like, oh, but I'm so in love with you and enjoying you every moment. And you're getting ripped away from me. And I often think when you talk about potential and like not living up to your potential or loss of potential, I often think back on our times when you were deployed. And especially when we were first dating, we were engaged and you deployed, and that was a long deployment. That was 9 months.
Yeah.
And
good one.
I remember thinking probably like 6 months into it, like, is this what I want to do for real? For real?
That's why you get engaged before.
Yeah. But I do remember, I mean, this is a complete honesty, right? Like I'm an open book, but I remember feeling that way and thinking, holy fuck, like I'm so young and he's so young.
Wasting my goddamn
I'm wasting
life.
all these nice wrinkle-free days sitting in a house in Huntington Beach. Going to bed at 8 p.m. every night. No. Yeah. I mean, but seriously, like there's, a lot of women probably have that feeling and that thought.
That's a really important question to ask yourself. And that's one of the reasons why when we have new guys, they're like, hey, I'm in love. I'm going to get married. And you're like, listen, I've read this book 100 times.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you that you're 22, 25, whatever it is. If you're so serious, get engaged.
Yeah.
If it's really forever, she'll be there when you get back.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's
don't
great
have to
advice.
rush into it.
Yeah.
And some listen and some don't.
Yeah.
I've seen more divorces than I've seen marriages, but.
Yeah. Yeah. I think not everybody's lucky enough to find their true one person right away. And sometimes you have to kind of go through the course of life and fumble around a little bit before you do find that person. But luckily, when I had those thoughts, I would also kind of counter those thoughts by saying like, this is my love. Like I won't ever find this love again. This love's unmatched. And I was new with you. Like I didn't even know what the potential of our love could be. So in the beginning, it is kind of a scary thing because you're like, I've literally spent more time without this human than I've spent with this human. At that point, that's kind of how it was for me. It was a scary feeling. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think we were together like 6 months.
I think we were together for 9 months when I proposed.
9 months. Okay. So it was 9 months together and then 9 months deployed. So by the time you finally got home, it was literally like half of the time I've known you, you were on a phone.
Yeah.
Skyping me. But also I think that does build a great bond because you get to really, really know somebody.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that I think that contributed to that. We had a goal the whole deployment together. We were planning the wedding and we were dealing with like some really high stress stuff. So we got to kind of work through a lot of conversation. And so there wasn't a whole lot of like, so how's it going?
Oh yeah. We had a ton of shit to talk about.
So like it always like spurred the next conversation and the next conversation, and then dealing with the drama and family dynamics of planning a wedding and all of that shit. So I think it really kind of helped that deployment. Because to be honest, I think that was the best one. Later on, the following deployments, it was like, so how's it going? You're like, same.
Yeah.
Cool. Same.
I don't honestly, like they're kind of all a blur for me. I don't really remember distinctively anything about any of them. Other than the one with Merrick.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's good. I don't
remember any of it.
That's good.
Just a fucking blur. You just get by. It's like survival mode. You just get by every day. And thankfully I had a good job and a good career that kind of kept me busy. And I had my mom after I had kids. So that helped.
I think that's always been one of the most important elements of our relationship. It's not necessarily that you had a good job, but that you're independent on your own.
Yeah.
You can hold the house down. Like you're good.
Yeah.
You're a badass bitch.
It's a good thing.
On your own.
It's a good thing, but it's also a tricky thing. When you would come home, there was like this alpha shit that was going down. It was like aggressive.
Oh, I think, I mean, we are the aggressive couple.
Yeah. So we would have to kind of like rein in on who's alpha and who's not. And, a lot of that's just knowing your role. I always have heard that, like, if you have a healthy marriage, it's typically because you know your role and you sit well into your role. And that doesn't mean being submissive and begging for, forgiveness or for permission. It just means knowing your role. And sometimes just, backing down instead of just being like aggro all the time and letting you win if you need a win, letting me win if I need the win for the day, like having that really nice jive of like, what do you need today? Do you need to be stroked? Okay, let me stroke your ego. So yeah, I think that's a healthy dynamic for any relationship or friendship even.
I think, when we first got together, we set the rules of the road. We'd both gotten out of some pretty shitty relationships. And so when we got together, we were pretty much like, hey, look, I don't want to play any games.
You said that. And that was profound.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, if you...
I never said that, but no, I'm just kidding. I was down with it, but yeah.
If you think that I'm supposed to be doing this and I'm not doing it, it's straight up because I don't know.
Yeah.
Just tell me.
I loved that about you.
Just fucking tell me because my whole goal in life is to make you happy. And especially
it still
when
is.
you're dating.
I love that so much about you. I've never met anyone so committed to my happiness.
Well,
it is like literally your full-time fucking job.
Well, the saying's true. Happy wife, happy life. I mean, that is legit. So,
but you do such a great job. Like sometimes it's not about what you're doing to make me happy. It's the fact that that's what you're committed to that makes me happy or makes me feel loved.
Yeah. I feel the same way. And I think, like I was saying, we set good ground rules that really kind of like ease the language of like, look, just tell me what the fuck you want.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it comes out that way. Like, fuck, dude, just tell me. You're like, okay, check, got it. Or
can't read minds. Yeah.
And the 5 love languages, that book really was.
It was good for us.
I think all of the stuff in there was pretty. You're like, yeah, okay, this makes sense. But really, what it laid out was the language that just helped. Like, look, tank's empty.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay.
Easy. Yeah.
Check.
Yeah.
Like,
totally. We've said that.
I should just need to shut the fuck up right now and do my job.
That's a really good tool on how to communicate, like, I'm not being fulfilled, without being offensive or provocative or, egregious. You're just like, look, my tank's empty.
And it's a good like stop sign, without, like you're saying, without being aggressive or in your face or whatever. Mm-hmm. And if you're truly in a selfless marriage where it's not all about you and you don't have to get your way and it's not a fight that you're trying to win, then
you're on the same team.
Well, yeah, you're like, check. Okay, got it. I need to draw back right now.
We read one time, or I don't know if I read it and I shared it with you or we read it together, but you know what I'm about to say? Yeah. So there's this, I'll tell the listeners if they don't know. We read each other's minds, but they can't read our minds. But there was this story I read one time, and it was about a wife and a husband, and they were just not jiving and not getting along, and it had been quite some time. And I think once time passes, you get to a certain point where like there is a no pass zone eventually with marriage. I watched that kind of happen with my own parents, and I think you get to a certain point where it's like, okay, you can't rectify it after this point. And this story of this couple, they had gotten close to that point. And the wife was like, okay, this is my last shot. I'm going to try complimenting him every morning and see where that takes me. Because I think when you get to that really like bad zone, you start really just like, shooting darts at each other, and there's just it's love lost at that point. So she did. She woke up every morning and she was like, I really appreciate that you made a lot of effort last night to do the dishes. Just like stupid shit. Like, hey, I really appreciated you changed Remy's diaper last night. Or I really appreciated that you picked up the dog shit in the backyard. And just like stupid everyday acts of kindness or, showing of love. And he never said anything back for like a couple weeks. So she just did it until she broke him.
Fucking job, man.
Yeah. And she broke him. And finally, eventually he was like, thanks. I also really appreciated and it opened up a conversation and a dialogue for them to both share what they appreciated about each other. And I try to practice that with you a lot because I do think that like we've had moments where I'm like, yo, you need to do this or that more. And you're like, no, I don't. I do a lot of that. Or, and like, I have to say in the last year, I haven't had to ever have that conversation with you. You just do it. And you just kind of make that extra effort. And you've been very cognizant of making sure that we don't ever have to have that dialogue. If we do, that's fine. Yeah. It's not the end of the world. But it's been really, really good. Yeah, you've just been really on top of shit where I'm like, holy fuck, who is this man?
It's
I brag about you at work all the time.
I didn't think that was the story you were going to tell.
Oh, you did it?
One of, I think one of the kind of biggest, like, okay, that clicks for me was somebody was telling me, you're not trying to win the fight with your wife because if you win, that means she loses. And you're not trying to make your wife a loser.
I love that. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. It's like, why are you trying to dog your wife?
Well, and like you said, same team. Like you can't.
Same team, same dream.
Like if you want to be on a winning team, you have to have winners. And if you're making your wife a loser,
then that makes you a loser.
Then you're losing
inherently.
In general. And so, you shouldn't enter the arguments. And obviously this is fucking easier to say than it is in practice.
Sure. Practicing's hard. Yeah. But I don't have to have grace. Like you're going to have moments where you're like, fuck you. No, fuck you. Yeah. We have moments like that a lot. But, and like everyone's like, oh, I would never curse or at my husband or my spouse. I'm like, we sometimes do. Sometimes you just got to let it out. And I think half the time when you're like, fuck you, we're like kind of laughing. Yeah. Because we know we've gotten past the point of like, okay, this is not a civil conversation any longer. It also changes things that you have little ears listening now too. Yeah. So you're kind of always well,
I think that and
watching out.
10 years into it, it's like, okay, maybe I just let him be for a while. Mm-hmm. I'll just let you be for a while.
Yeah.
And then we'll circle back and
you always kind of come back, or I will. Yeah.
Like,
hey,
I'm
sorry, I was being stupid.
Listen, I was just being kind of a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing and the biggest compliment ever is just saying to your spouse every day, like, I'm so lucky I have you, and I'm so glad I have you. And I don't think enough people take time to just really pause and say that. And it's a very simple thing, but like, God, how meaningful is that to have someone say to you, I am so lucky to have you. Look you in the eyes and say that to you. You know what I mean? That's a really good start. If you're, and I would say that if anyone's out there listening who's kind of in a rough spot with a friend or a parent or a loved one, just pause, look at them in the eyes. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. Get out that chocolate. No, I'm just kidding. Just pause, look at them in the eyes and say, look, I'm so thankful I have you in my life.
It, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Authenticity, obviously, but.
Well, it's not necessarily obvious, you know, because, and I don't know, going back to your story, maybe it's not, maybe you don't mean it at first, you know, but eventually those words of affirmation will kind of bleed into action and then bleed into, you know, rebuilding whatever bond, or not even rebuilding. I mean, some of our friends, we look at, like, you know, Aaron and Corinne, or Jimmy and Kim and all these people, and you're like, you guys are like the fucking role models.
Yeah.
Like, shit.
You the parents. You the real MVPs. Yeah, they have great
and
bonds.
It's just really how well they complement each other in their marriage, and how much they accept their roles. And I don't mean that in like a misogynistic way, but
no, they jive really well.
Yeah, it's like, this is my role in the marriage. This is the weight that I carry, and this is yours, and this is the weight you carry, and we're cool and we jive that way. So.
Yeah, no, I think it's always healthy to have a role model or a marriage that you look up to, or, you know, something to emulate. A lot of people have their own parents.
Yeah.
Some of us don't, but, you know, some of us can look to that and say, or like grandparents, rather. Like, my grandparents have been married for almost 80 years.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. They celebrated their 75th almost like 5 years ago. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. But they got married. This is funny. It's a funny story. My grandmother got married they got married young. I don't know how old my grandfather was, but my grandmother, she was, and I call them Papa and Mama. I don't really call them grandmother and grandfather. I'm not that proper. But anyways, in Kentucky, they got married at 15. And my mama was terrified to sleep in the same bed as my papa. So she slept with his sister for like 2 years in the same house, but slept with his sister. And I just think about that. And I'm like, holy shit, man. Like, that is like getting married in 10 years from now. Like, that is like cray-cray.
That is crazy. And I wonder how that like transition happened. Do you think it was?
Yeah, like, are you want to come into my room now?
Do you think it was the sister that was like, listen, bitch, get out of my bed?
That's a great question. I should probably ask her because I just found that out like recently. My parents were great parents, and I had a great childhood. We were joking the other night that I was like backstroking and sugar my whole life. But they always did a really good job of like blocking us out of anything negative. Like, we never knew anything bad or anything negative. Everything was like sugar, rainbows, unicorns, you know. I love that, and I appreciate that so much. You, on the other hand, have had such like a raw dynamic in your family where you saw a lot, you went through a lot, and I think in juxtaposition, it's paved you a better path as far as dealing with problems or dealing with issues where like minor thing will happen in my life and it's like explosive and dramatic and all the things. Sure. And so I think it's everything happens for a reason, right? And
you learned it, learned
it differently.
You learned to deal with conflict when you're young, or you don't.
Yeah.
And then you have to learn as an adult.
I guess my point in saying that is like backstroking and sugar isn't all great, because when you get older, there's no sugar and you ain't backstroking.
But you're also
flailing.
But you guys aren't doing so bad.
No, I know.
You guys are doing great.
No, we're doing great. Yeah. No, I obviously have been able to like critical manage pretty easily, but yeah, it's interesting that, sometimes those things are put into your life to help you be a more dynamic human. So
yeah.
with that, I think we're ready to wrap up. Thanks for listening, and tune in to our next podcast next week.
Check us out on Instagram, led_in_and_lace, or led_in_lace. Check out our friends, Bad Omen Knives. That's Bad OMEN Knives. He does some killer work.
Yeah.
I got a couple of blades from him, and
I'm staring at a skateboard that he designed as well. That's pretty rad. So
probably
super talented human.
One of the most talented humans that I know. And
agree.
He just crushes pretty much anything. But
you need a cake, he can make it.
Freshly retired.
Yeah.
And I think this knife business turned out from a hobby to just, he's crushing.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's great. I love when we have friends that can be successful with their passion. That's really cool.
Absolutely. All right.
Well, all right. Thank you. Good night. I love you too.
Have a good night.